What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another video, and in today's video we're going to be talking about the latest adaptation of an Agatha Christie book, this time around A Haunting in Venice. Directed by Kenneth Branagh and written by Michael Green once again, A Haunting in Venice stars Kenneth Branagh as well as Michelle Yeoh, Jamie Dornan, Tina Fey, Kelly Riley, Jude Hill, and many more. So I just got home from checking out the latest adaptation of one of Agatha Christie's books, A Haunting in Venice. We've gotten a couple of these now, with the first one being Murder on the Orient Express, then we got Death on the Nile, and now we have A Haunting in Venice. Once again, directed and starring Kenneth Branagh, who I think is just a really great actor. And I'll start this off by saying that I think he's fantastic in this movie when it comes to playing the lead detective that's part of these murder mysteries, Hercule Poirot, I believe is how you pronounce his name. He's got a really nice heavy accent throughout the course of these films, and I think for the most part he pulls off the character really, really well. He's an interesting detective, and I'm a huge fan of murder mysteries. I've covered a few of them here on the channel, and when I have covered them, I have mentioned that I always have a good time with these kinds of movies. Sometimes they can be a little bit formulaic at this point because it is a genre that's been around for so long, not only on screen but most notably in books on the pages. And Agatha Christie, without a doubt, is one of the most iconic writers when it comes to murder mysteries. And while a lot of the stories that have to do with Agatha Christie can feel a little bit formulaic themselves, they do have something that makes them unique to Agatha Christie. So going into this movie, I was actually really looking forward to it because I'm not familiar with the actual source material. I've never read an Agatha Christie book from beginning to end, to be completely honest. I've only ever seen works that are inspired by or adapting her work, which is where I'm the most familiar with what she's done. But when it comes to A Haunting in Venice, I was mostly interested because I saw the trailers were leaning into this horror vibe. Obviously, it's called A Haunting in Venice, and if you've seen the marketing for this film, most notably the trailer, then you know that this is a murder mystery that has a bit of a horror tinge to it, which definitely, without a doubt, pulled me in and got me really curious to check this movie out, more so than Murder on the Orient Express and Death on the Nile. And after having seen the movie, what I could say truthfully is I unfortunately was not a fan of this film. But before I get into what I didn't really like about this film, I want to talk about some of the positives and talk about what the movie is all about. Of course, as I mentioned before, this film focuses on Kenneth Branagh, who plays the character of Hercule Poirot, or the investigator here, the detective at the center of these stories, with a fantastic mustache. And not long into the film, we realize that he is retired from this life. He doesn't want to be a detective anymore, which is, a trope we've seen time and time again when it comes to the highly, successful and kind of famous detective who can solve any case. And not long into the film, he's reintroduced to an old friend who's played by Tina Fey, who is an author of fictionalized books, as well as just an author of books in general that do have a lot of praise. And she invites him to come and sit with her at a seance that's going to be happening soon with a medium played by Michelle Yeoh, where they're going to try to reach out to this woman's daughter who passed away apparently via suicide years ago. The woman, the mother in this situation, is played by Kelly Riley, and she's brought this medium together along with other people who have been involved in their household and previous relationships within this family to see if they can reach out to this young woman named Alicia, who is again suspected to have killed herself years in the past. Of course, right out of the gate, the detective is not buying into this, and he's very skeptical about the whole situation, and that's why Tina Fey brings him to kind of see what he can discover about the way that this medium goes about things, and what he can uncover as far as what's the truth of the matter, what's fake about it all. And not long after this seance, some murders start to happen, and now he snaps right into detective mode and tries to save the day, tries to figure out who is the murderer. Now, if you've seen the marketing, though, as I mentioned before, this film leans into a bit of a horror vibe, and they definitely show that there's a spiritual side, a bit of a paranormal element to this film. And what I can say without getting into spoilers is that was without a doubt the thing that intrigued me the most, and how they were going to wrap up this murder mystery while also having a paranormal element to the film. And having all said that now, what I could say as far as the positives for this film right out of the gate are, I thought the performances were pretty great throughout. Kenneth Branagh is really the standout, without a doubt. He is the one that you are rooting for the most throughout the course of the film. He's the one that you're the most connected to throughout the course of the film. He was the most engaging throughout the course of the film. And I think when it comes to his directorial style here, in terms of the way the film is shot and the overall aesthetic of the film, it's pretty solid. As a period piece, I think it gets all the right things right that you need to get in a period piece when it comes to the atmosphere, the set design, the costume design, and all of the actors, playing convincing roles that feel old-timey. And beyond that, though, unfortunately, that's about where my positives end, as I found this film to just be a drag. This movie, for me, the first hour of the film felt like it took 2 hours. The pacing of this film was just at a snail's pace for me throughout the entirety of the film. And one of my favorite things about a murder mystery is being able to see all of these scenes that make you, as the audience member, second guess who the killer is throughout the entirety of the runtime. And for me, this film never really had any of that. I never really felt like I was figuring out who it was. I just kind of felt like I was just watching events unfold that ultimately just felt bland and formulaic and just filled with tropes. Not only is this film filled with tropes when it comes to the murder mystery genre, but it also feels like it's filled with tropes when it comes to the horror genre, as it tries to blend the two. There's nothing here that I feel like you've never seen before, and there's nothing here really that ever really surprised me or shocked me or made me feel completely, like there was twists and turns and maybe like something had kind of shocked me in any way, shape, or form. I was just sitting there staring at the screen thinking, why am I so bored? I shouldn't have done this because I probably won't sleep well tonight, but I actually had a cup of black cold brew coffee as I was driving to the theater, and I was wide awake as I was getting there. I was wide awake throughout the trailers. I was wide awake as the film was getting started, but just due to the pacing, I was just finding myself sleepier and sleepier throughout the course of that first hour. I never fell asleep, I never nodded off or anything like that, but my eyelids were getting heavy just because I stopped really caring about what's going on. Now, since I've left the theater, I'm wide awake again because I'm wired on caffeine right now. And yeah, just watching this movie, I just never really felt connected to the characters. I never really felt connected to the actual murder mystery and any of the intrigue of the mystery in any way, shape, or form. It didn't even really feel like one of those films that has all of these different things going on where you can kind of recontextualize some of the scenes that you've seen to kind of help us find the answers for the murder mystery. A lot of times it felt like the detective played by Kenneth Branagh was just kind of pulling certain things out of his ass, and it just felt really convenient at times. Some of the discoveries that he made didn't really feel like something that we were watching him uncover, more so just something that he figured out on his own that we as an audience never really saw him figure out. So it ultimately kind of feels like the movie thinks it's more clever than it is, and that it came to some fantastic conclusion at the end of the film that ultimately just kind of felt like, I went with my mom to check out this movie, who is a huge fan of Agatha Christie books and is always a fan of any sort of a movie or TV show that's adapting Agatha Christie stories. She is the target demographic for a film like this. And as soon as the movie was over, I looked over at my mom and I was just kind of like, I wasn't really a fan. And she was just like, yeah, me neither. She was like telling me that she just felt like it was a bit messy and a bit all over the place. And that's really something I could definitely agree with as well. Like I mentioned before, I think the film is very well shot and it's very well acted. I don't think there's anybody here that gives a bad performance. You have a really stellar cast in a lot of ways, and I think, again, when it comes down to the period piece element of this film, the set design, the costume design, the production value of the film was pretty solid. But when it comes to the horror side of things that the film is marketing, it was never really creepy or all that scary. I feel like most of the creepy things that are in this film were shown in the trailer, and it ultimately just feels very conventional. When it comes to the murder mystery side of things, I just never really felt all that engrossed in the mystery. I never really felt all that engrossed in the intrigue of what was going on. I never really felt like I cared about any of the characters. I wasn't really rooting for anybody to not be the killer or to be the killer. I never had those moments where my brain is saying, well, that's the killer for sure. And oh no, maybe this person's the killer now. I never really landed on who I thought the killer was, not because the film had me completely like, you know, all over the place and shocked in different directions where I'm always changing my opinion, but more so because I just felt like the film didn't really give me enough to really figure out who the killer was, and certain things just felt just convenient when it came to the detective side of things. Him figuring out certain things just felt like where'd you pull that out of? Like nothing about what we actually are seeing is showing us that you're figuring this out. You're just saying it in the next scene, and we just have to kind of go with it. So I feel like I'm rambling a little bit now at this point, but what I can say about this film, again, is it's well made in a lot of ways, but when it comes down to the narrative and all the characters, I ultimately found it to be rather boring, rather bland, and I can't see myself revisiting this film anytime soon. So are you a fan of these Agatha Christie films starring Kenneth Branagh as this detective? Is this a movie that you've been excited for? And if you saw the film, did you like the film? Did you not like the film? Whatever the case may be, leave any and all comments down below, and I'll see you beautiful people in the next one. Bye-bye.